What if I told you that one of the greatest sources of Jesus' power was not the miracles, not the crowds, and not even the words he spoke, but the silence he returned to every single day? What if the true foundation of Christ's healing ability, spiritual authority, and unwavering clarity came from a disciplined inner practice that most people never hear about? According to the forgotten insights of Edgar Cayce, Jesus did not simply pray in the way prayer is often understood today. He entered deep states of meditation, conscious attunement, and direct communion with the divine presence. And Cayce insisted this was not a mystery reserved for Jesus alone, but a universal spiritual principle meant for all humanity. Edgar Cayce, often referred to as the sleeping prophet, gave more than 14,000 documented readings while in a self-induced trance state that closely resembled deep meditation. In this condition, Cayce accessed information that he claimed came from the Akashic Records, a universal storehouse of knowledge containing the soul history of every individual. Among his most compelling readings were those concerning the life, mission, and inner practices of Jesus. Cayce's depiction of Christ was not diminished by this perspective. Instead, it revealed Jesus as a perfected example of what conscious alignment with God could achieve. According to Cayce, Jesus prepared for his earthly mission over many lifetimes, gradually mastering the harmony between body, mind, and spirit. This mastery did not come from divine favoritism, but from deliberate inner discipline. Meditation, Cayce said, was the cornerstone of this discipline. Through daily periods of stillness, Jesus aligned his human consciousness with the divine will, allowing higher spiritual forces to work through him without obstruction. Cayce explained that when Jesus withdrew from the world, it was not to escape it. It was to enter a deeper relationship with it. In solitude, Jesus quieted the personality, stilled the emotional body, and brought the physical form into alignment with spiritual law. This inner stillness created a living channel through which divine energy could flow freely. Healing occurred not because Jesus imposed his will, but because he removed all resistance to God's presence. The Gospels tell us that Jesus often rose before dawn to pray, retreated into the wilderness, or disappeared into the mountains alone. Edgar Cayce emphasized that these moments were essential to Jesus' work, not interruptions from it. After teaching large crowds, healing the sick, or confronting human suffering, Jesus returned to silence to rebalance his energy and reattune his consciousness. Cayce suggested that without this daily inner renewal, even Jesus would have been physically and spiritually depleted. In Cayce's view, meditation was the mechanism through which Jesus maintained perfect attunement. It allowed him to perceive truth beyond appearances, to act without fear, and to remain anchored in compassion, even in the face of betrayal and violence. This was the hidden source of Christ's authority. Not force, not dominance, but alignment. And Cayce believed this same spiritual technology remains available to anyone willing to practice stillness, self-observation, and inner listening today. Edgar Cayce taught that meditation was not simply a private spiritual habit of Jesus, but the very mechanism through which divine law could express itself in the physical world. In numerous readings, Cayce explained that Jesus understood spiritual energy as something that must be consciously directed through alignment rather than force. When Jesus healed the sick or calmed chaotic situations, he was not exercising personal power. He was surrendering the personal self so completely that divine life could flow through him without resistance. Meditation was the gateway that made this level of surrender possible. According to Cayce, Jesus possessed a deep understanding of the creative nature of thought. Every thought, emotion, and intention carried vibrational influence. What was held in consciousness shaped the condition of the body, the emotions, and even the circumstances surrounding a person. Through daily meditation, Jesus purified his inner landscape, dissolving fear, resentment, doubt, and ego-driven desire before they could take form. This inner purification allowed him to perceive the true spiritual condition of those he encountered beyond appearances or symptoms. Healing, then, was not about correcting something broken, but restoring harmony between the soul and divine law. Cayce often described Jesus as operating from what he called cosmic consciousness, a state of awareness in which the individual identity becomes united with God rather than separate from it. In this state, compassion arises naturally, wisdom flows without effort, and love becomes the guiding intelligence behind every action. Jesus accessed this state repeatedly through deep meditation. Cayce believed this was the true meaning behind the statement, "I and my Father are one," not as a claim of superiority, but as an example of perfect attunement available to all. The wilderness experience described in the Gospels takes on a deeper meaning through Cayce's interpretation. Rather than a brief symbolic event, Cayce viewed it as an extended period of intense inner discipline and meditation. During this time, Jesus confronted the full spectrum of human temptation, including fear of survival, desire for authority, and the temptation to misuse spiritual power. Through stillness and inner focus, these impulses were brought into balance. By mastering them internally, Jesus ensured they would never dominate his actions in the outer world. Cayce also emphasized that what people called miracles were not violations of natural law, but demonstrations of higher spiritual law operating through an aligned consciousness. Meditation allowed Jesus to tune his awareness to these laws in the same way a skilled musician tunes an instrument before producing harmony. When that tuning was complete, events unfolded naturally. The blind saw, the sick recovered, and hearts were transformed, not through spectacle, but through resonance with divine order. Most importantly, Cayce insisted that Jesus never intended these abilities to remain exclusive. His teachings consistently pointed others inward. Statements such as "the kingdom of God is within you" were not poetic metaphors, but practical instructions. Cayce believed Jesus was attempting to teach humanity the same inner process he practiced daily. Meditation, prayer, self-examination, and loving service were tools meant to awaken the Christ consciousness within each individual, not to elevate one figure above the rest. From Cayce's perspective, Jesus meditated daily because the human mind naturally drifts back into distraction, fear, and separation. Continuous attunement was necessary to remain aligned with divine purpose. Meditation restored clarity, renewed compassion, and kept spiritual power anchored in love rather than ego. It was this disciplined return to stillness that allowed Jesus to walk his path with authority, humility, and unwavering devotion to the good of all. From Edgar Cayce's perspective, the most misunderstood aspect of Jesus' life was not his miracles, his teachings, or even his sacrifice, but his inner discipline. Cayce emphasized that Jesus' daily meditation was not an escape from responsibility or suffering, but the foundation that made true service possible. The outer world, with its constant noise, emotional intensity, and conflicting energies, naturally pulls the human mind into reaction, fear, and fragmentation. Meditation was how Jesus returned to inner order, restored spiritual clarity, and ensured that every action flowed from divine purpose rather than personal impulse. Cayce explained that the human mind functions on several levels simultaneously. There is the conscious mind that reasons, speaks, and makes decisions. There is the subconscious mind that stores emotional patterns, memories, and unexamined beliefs. And there is the superconscious mind, which remains eternally connected to divine intelligence and universal truth. Through meditation, Jesus aligned these levels into a single unified current. Thought, feeling, intention, and spiritual knowing moved together without contradiction. This inner unity produced an unmistakable authority. People responded to Jesus not because he demanded belief, but because coherence, truth, and peace radiated naturally from his presence. One of Cayce's most profound insights was that meditation allowed Jesus to transcend ordinary limitations of time and perception. In deep attunement, Jesus perceived causes behind conditions rather than reacting to surface appearances. This explains why he often addressed unspoken thoughts, healed without physical contact, and acted with extraordinary timing. Cayce suggested that in these moments, Jesus was not operating from linear awareness, but from a higher state of perception, where past influences, present conditions, and future possibilities were all visible at once. Cayce also taught that meditation played a critical role in maintaining Jesus' physical vitality. Deep stillness calmed the nervous system, slowed the breath, and allowed the body to absorb restorative life energy. Jesus understood that spiritual service required a balanced and receptive physical vessel. Meditation allowed him to recover after intense encounters, long days of teaching, and emotional exchanges with those in deep suffering. Without this inner restoration, even the strongest spiritual focus could lead to exhaustion and imbalance. Emotionally, Cayce believed Jesus' mastery came through awareness rather than suppression. Emotions such as sorrow, righteous anger, grief, and compassion were fully experienced, yet never allowed to dominate consciousness. Meditation created the inner space where emotions could arise, be witnessed, and be surrendered. From this space, forgiveness replaced resentment, patience replaced urgency, and love replaced fear. This emotional clarity explains how Jesus could meet hostility without defensiveness and injustice without bitterness. Cayce further suggested that meditation allowed Jesus to remain unattached to outcomes. His actions were guided by divine will rather than personal expectation. This freedom from attachment prevented pride when miracles occurred and despair when his message was rejected. Meditation anchored Jesus in obedience to higher truth rather than human approval. In this way, humility and authority coexisted without contradiction. Perhaps most striking in Cayce's teachings is the idea that humanity misunderstood Jesus not by rejecting him, but by misplacing emphasis. Over time, attention shifted from his inner practice to his outer acts, from lived experience to belief alone, from process to personality. Cayce insisted that Jesus intended his followers to follow the same inner path he walked, not merely admire his results. Meditation was the doorway to this path, the practice through which divine guidance could be personally experienced rather than passively accepted. Seen through Edgar Cayce's lens, Jesus meditated daily because remaining aligned in a world shaped by fear, separation, and distraction required continual renewal. Stillness was not withdrawal, but return. Return to clarity. Return to love. Return to truth. And it was this return, repeated day after day, that allowed Jesus to live as a bridge between the human and the divine, demonstrating what becomes possible when consciousness is fully aligned with the source of life itself.